What's up? What's up?
Welcome to Let's Talk About It, where we give it to you raw and uncut. The podcast show where we speak what's on our mind. Now here's your host, Aminah G.
Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It. I am your host, Aminah G. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well and staying safe. Listen, I'm just going to jump right into this topic this morning because it's been heavy on my mind. So I just want to get right into it. This morning's show, I want to talk about the shooting that took place in Columbus, Ohio, where young 15-year-old Khia Bryant lost her life outside of her foster care home on April 20th, 2021. She was shot to death as she whirled a knife at another teenager that was pinned up against the car. An officer pulled up and he shot her 4 times, killing her. Officer Nicholas Reardon was his name. So let's jump right into this. We're going to discuss a lot of things that happened on this day. You know, this is such a sad, heartbreaking story all the way around the board. No matter how you look at it, how you try to figure it out, how you, try to digest it. It's just a sad story, heartbreaking story all the way around the board. She was 15 years old with her whole life ahead of her. She hadn't even started life as of yet. And that all came to an end on April 20th. It had been reported weeks earlier that Khia Bryant's sister called the Ohio Police Department begging and pleading with them to remove her from that foster care home. She stated that she didn't want to stay there anymore. And, this is really, really heartbreaking. The AP reports that this was not the first call like that one that Khia Bryant's sister made. Her call was one of many calls placed to the 911 operator for the same foster care home since 2017. And this is a big concern here. There is big problems. I mean, just what the heck is going on inside of that foster care home that she felt that she had to call 911 instead of going to the foster care parents or, somebody that worked in that home. What is going on inside of that home? They said that, again, this is one of many calls that have been placed to the 911 operator at that same very foster home. So there is, something going on inside of there. I would like to know, has Child Protective Services been out to the home to investigate? And if not, why not? And if they have, what were their findings? 17 calls placed to the 911 operator since 2017. That's a lot of calls.
You have been listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.
And that is what the records obtained by AP showed. And then it also showed 13 reports taken related to children who have gone missing, as well as other issues in that same very foster home, in that same foster care home. What is so troubling is that they're still up and running. That's the troubling part about the whole thing. I believe they should have been shut down temporarily until they find out what's going on. You had 13 reports saying that children have gone missing. And now you have, a teenager being shot by a police officer because of fighting and things like that. There's some questions that really need to be answered here.
You have been listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.
The question here is, Where were the foster care parents at? And why did Ma'Khia Bryant's sister feel that she needed to call the Columbus, Ohio Police Department, begging to be removed from the foster home? Where was her worker? She was told by the Ohio Police Department that they could not make the decision to remove her. They claimed she became irate and said that she would kill somebody if she had to stay there in that foster home. I mean, what was going on inside of that home? That's the question again. What was going on? And why didn't the Columbus, Ohio Police Department send someone out to do a wellness check on her? That is a question also that needs to be answered.
You have been listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.
They could have sent an officer out to, out to the house to see if everything was okay, assess the situation, not just sweep it up underneath the rug. I just feel that, they could have checked on her. They could have checked to see what was going on at that house. It is a 911 phone call, and somebody, to me, that's a distress phone call. She's begging to be removed from that group home, from that foster care home, and all you guys can tell her is it's not your job, or you have no say-so in moving her. Yeah, well, that might be true, but you could have went out and did a check on her, a wellness check. At this moment, I believe that the foster care home should be temporarily shut down until a full, complete investigation is done. There needs to be a full investigation on who is running the place. There needs to be also an extensive background check on the foster care parents, because how this even happened is beyond me. They need to really get to the root of this whole situation. They even need to make sure that they have the proper documents to run that foster care home. And they also need to make sure that they're not housing more children in that house than there is supposed to be. They need to check everything about that foster care home from A to Z.
You have been listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.
Because what I seen on the video was extremely disturbing. Now, like I said in the beginning of the show, we have a 15-year-old that is dead. The foster care mother of the group home, Angela Moore, states she was not home at the time of the fight when it broke out. She also states that she was at work. She's also claiming two of the previous foster children that lived in that house had come there to celebrate a birthday and was fighting with Ma'Khia over chores, which I don't understand that. I don't understand that at all. How is that even possible? They don't even live in that home that they came to visit. And that's the key word, visit. So why are they fighting with anyone over any house chores in a house that they don't even live in? They don't even belong there. Like, why? Ma'Khia, along with a group of people, were all standing outside when Officer Reardon pulled up on the scene. You could see one of the girls in pink walk over to the officer and start talking to him. Moments after, you could see another person being chased by who we now know was Ma'Khia Bryant. That person then falls to the ground and is then seen being kicked in the head by a male adult, which I don't understand. And I feel that instead of him adding fire to the situation, he should have been trying to diffuse it. But yet and still, he kicked the person on the ground in the head. The next thing that you will see is Ma'Khia go after the girl that's talking to the officer. The girl takes off running and is up against a car. And then you can see what appears to be a knife in Ma'Khia's hand, up in the air, getting ready to come down on the person pinned up against the car. You can then hear the officer begin to yell, and then shots are fired, and Micaiah is now on the ground. Other officers arrive on the scene, and they begin to administer life-saving CPR. The young teen was transported to Mount Carmel East Hospital, where she was pronounced dead at 5:21 p.m.
You have been listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.
Terrible, terrible situation. Terrible, terrible situation. All the way around the board. It's just terrible. My people, this is a tough one. She's 15 years old. The question is, could there have been anything else that Officer Reardon could have done besides shooting her 4 times? Should he have used his taser? And would the taser have stopped her from killing the other person against the car? Would his taser have stopped Micaiah Bryant in time to keep her from stabbing the person against the car? That's the question. What I will never understand, though, is why did Micaiah wait until the officers arrived on the scene to begin chasing these 2 people? I will never understand that. And why was the male subject that was there, we'll just call him a male subject, the male subject that kicked the other person in the head on the ground, why didn't he try to stop the situation before it even reached to that point? That's the $1 billion question. You had adults on the scene. It should have never got to that point. Now, some people will say that, the officer was justified because, Micaiah had the knife in her hand and she was going to kill somebody. And if that was your daughter or if that was your son, what would you have wanted the officer to do? Yes, I would have wanted the officer to stop the threat, to stop someone from causing harm, bodily harm to anybody, not only just my children, anybody. But the $1 million question is, could he have used his taser, and would that taser had stopped her from stabbing the young lady that was pinned up against the car?
You have been listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.
Mr. Bryant, Micaiah Bryant's father, said he did not know that his daughter had been placed into foster care. Well, why not? Why didn't you know that your daughter had been placed into a foster care home? Why? Now, I'm not bashing anybody here because people do go through circumstances that is beyond their control, but I would like to know why Mr. Bryant was not aware that his 15-year-old daughter had been placed into a foster care home. That's all. It is said that Paula Bryant, the mother of Micaiah Bryant, had been working as a nursing home assistant, trying very, very hard to get her daughter out of the foster care and back into her home. The Bryant family expressed dismay and outrage at Micaiah's death. They describe Micaiah as a very sweet and caring, loving person, and they said that she should still be alive today. And I agree with that. She should still be alive. Tensions over the killing of Black people were already still raw in Columbus, Ohio. In December, Casey Goodson Jr., 23 years old, was shot and killed at the entrance of his own home by a Franklin County Sheriff's deputy who had been searching for, once again, someone else. 2 weeks later, Andre Hill was shot by a Columbus police officer, and that officer was later charged with felony murder. So this is an ongoing thing here in Columbus, Ohio, of police shooting Black unarmed people.
You have been listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.
It is said that a third-party investigation will be conducted by the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, and that the officer, Reardon, would need to answer some key questions, including what type of information he had regarding the circumstance. What did he see at the scene? And what would have happened if he had taken no action at all? It was Valentine's Day when Micaiah Bryant moved into the Moore foster care home, where her youngest sister had lived already for more than 1 year. It is said that the sisters were very close with each other and would dance and make TikTok videos together. So I can only imagine the pain that this younger sister is experiencing right now at her sister's death. And I really hope that they have removed her from the Moore foster care home and she's back at home with her biological mother. And if that is not possible right now at the moment, hopefully a family member has stepped up to the plate and taken her in. But she should not still be at the Moore home. Not at all.
You have been listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.
The White House describes Micaiah Bryant's death as a tragic loss, while law enforcement in Columbus, Ohio, are pleading with the community to have patience. They have also released a 911 call. So we're going to take a listen in on the 911 call.
911, where's your emergency? Is there an apartment number letter? What's going on?
Come up here!
Amy, you need to talk to me.
It's 3171. We got these grown girls over here trying to fight us, trying to stab us, trying to put our hands on our grandma. Get her now!
Have you seen any weapons? Ma'am, do you see any weapons?
We need a police officer here now.
Do you see any weapons?
He's officer now.
Ma'am, do you see any weapons?
The dog's trying to hear us. No!
Okay, so as you can hear, the 911 officer asked the caller if she's seen any weapons several times, but she never responded to his questions. And then the call is disconnected and you hear just the dial tone. You can also tell that the caller was extremely young. Now we are going to take a listen to the second 911 call. The second caller was an adult that was calling in, but she didn't give any information because at the same time she was talking to the 911 operator, the police had just arrived on the scene.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
It's on Legion Lane.
What's the emergency there?
Oh, well, never mind. The police are already out here. Never mind. Thank you.
What I would also like to know was the second caller that was an adult inside of this foster care home when all of this chaos was taking place? Or was she just a caller calling in out of concern of what was happening?
You have been listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.
Okay, so now we're going to listen at what took place when the first officer arrives on the scene, who has now been identified as Officer Nicholas Reardon, and also what is the final moments of young Micaiah Bryant's life.
What's going on? Hey, what's going on? Hey, 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 get down, get down, get down, get down.
Again, this is a terrible, tragic situation all the way around the board. We have a 15-year-old that has lost her life, but it didn't have to escalate to the level that it went to. It didn't have to.
You have been listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.
Also, I would like to make a correction on Ma'Khia Bryant's age. She is not 15 years old. She is 16 years old. So I stand corrected on that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Again, she's 16, not 15, Ma'Khia Bryant. Okay, also, there was a witness that was recording the incident from his home in the garage. So let's take a listen to his version of what he saw and what he was able to capture on his video camera from his garage.
So me and my wife were coming home from having a late lunch, and there was a young lady in pink and then another young lady out front exchanging words. We didn't think too much about it, but they were very, very loud. You could tell they were upset about something. Didn't take note of what they were arguing about, so I had no idea. We went inside our house, then went out to the backyard to play with our dog. I realized I forgot something out in the car, ran out to the car and grabbed it, and as I did that, one of the girls locked another girl out of the house, and then they said something about, how dare you lock me out of my mama's house, this is my house too. And I just kind of thought, this is going to die down. They'll unlock the door, they'll figure it out, and it'll be done and over with. Well, I went back inside, and about 5 minutes later, me and my wife decided to come inside the house, and that's when you heard the shots. My wife got down on the ground, and because there was no retaliation shots fired, I figured that was a cop out there. So I went to my laundry room and took a look outside, and that's when I saw Khia on the ground and everyone else kind of in a chaos, unfortunately, because it literally just happened. I didn't think anything about my garage footage until after more officers arrived and taped off the scene and was trying to resuscitate her. And then I thought, oh, my gosh, I've got this on film. Let me go check my computer. So I told an officer on scene, I think I have this on film. He asked me to go check, which I did. And sure enough, I went ahead and downloaded it and burned it to a DVD for the cops on scene.
You have been listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.
At the end of the show, I'm going to be putting the show number. And what I would like for you guys to do is reach out, call the number. And the question is, was there anything else that the officer could have done besides shooting Ma'Khia Bryant 4 times and killing her? When you call in, you're going to leave your name, where you're calling from, and then I'm going to air it on the show the following week. I will air your questions and your concerns and try to answer anything to the best of my ability.
You have been listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.
When the witness was asked, did he think that the officer could have done anything else instead of pulling his gun on a 16-year-old and killing her, shooting her 4 times and killing her? And this is his response.
From my point of view, watching this, unfortunately, the whole scenario put him in a bad spot regardless of what the situation was. He could have either not fired and the young lady in pink could have got stabbed in the neck and been brutally or fatally injured and then responded and shot, and that would have been 2 young ladies possibly dead. Or he could have responded the way that he did, and unfortunately, 1 lady lost her life in an incident that probably could have been avoided. It shows he literally got out of his vehicle and had seconds to respond. So the video doesn't lie. I mean, there was an altercation. He responded. He reacted with what he thought was his best judgment. Whether that means he try and go for the leg, which I don't think he had time to take aim and go for a leg, to be honest. So he did what he thought was best.
You have been listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.
Like I said before, and I'll say it again, this is tragic all the way around. A young 16-year-old is dead. And for what? She had her whole life ahead of her. She hadn't even started life. but because of something that probably could have been diffused and should have been diffused before it even escalated to that level, is now dead. This is terrible. It is really, really terrible.
You have been listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.
Khia Bryant was laid to rest at the First Church of God in Columbus, Ohio. In attendance was the mother of Breonna Taylor. Also in attendance was Ohio Congresswoman Joyce Beatty.
We need to send a message. So I go back to Washington in 7 days and I will fly a flag over this nation in the name of Khia Bryant.
Khia Bryant's principal, Emmanuel Anthony, who described Bryant as loving and kind, gave her her high school diploma.
And this tragedy hits differently for me because I looked at Khia as one of mine. We got an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, even in this moment with tears in our eyes, to still give God the praise. Because even though she was taken on a Tuesday, that's not going to stop us from celebrating her early graduation on this Friday.
Khia Bryant's funeral was the third funeral that was held at the First Church of God since December of families of Black people that have been fatally shot and killed by Ohio police.
You have been listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.
Once again, I am your host, Aminah G. Make sure to tune in every Sunday at 9 o'clock a.m. for another episode of Let's Talk About It. I would like for all of you to call in at 347-201-9059. Once again, 347-201-9059. And give your opinion on the Khia Bryant shooting. The question is, do you think that the officer, Nicholas Reardon, could have used his taser to stop Khia from stabbing the other person? And what do you think the officer could have and should have done different? When you call in, please leave your name and where you're calling in from. Make it short and no profanity, and I will air it on next week's show. The number, once again, is 347-201-9059. Until then, take care, wear your mask, and stay safe.
We want to thank everyone for tuning in. Check back every Sunday for new episodes. You can find us on Buzzsprout at Let's Talk About It and on Facebook at Aminah G100, all capital letters. Until next time, be safe.
You're listening to Let's Talk About It with your host, Aminah G.